Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Linemiller, your host. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They are creating tomorrow's food business ecosystem today. And we have a really, really interesting guest with us today. David Palmer is the Chief Product Officer with Vodafone, and we're going to talk about some cool technology. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Nice to be on your podcast, Pam, all the way from London, England. It's a pleasure. I'm a fan, and just really looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, and I thank you for saying where you're from. We do have a worldwide audience, and so I know people are excited to hear from experts from all across the world. And your expertise is really in that technology space and how it might be affecting us in a positive way. But give us a little bit of your background and what you do there at Vodafone.
So as you know, Vodafone is a global telecoms company. I think there's 27 partner markets around the world, over 20 operating companies. So it's truly global, and 400 million mobile connections, 185 million IoT devices connected to our IoT platform, and I think 40 million SIMs powering the connectivity in cars. So a truly global business, but also a telecoms company that, like most companies, is becoming a technology company. And a platform organization. So really, it's been a real pleasure for me to operate in that sort of environment. What it means to be a part of a global company is that you have global resources, you have global platforms, you have global colleagues around the world and to help. But what's most important is that you also have an infrastructure to work with that you can use. When you're looking to move into new use cases, consider new innovations as well. So I think Vodafone really has been a leader in allowing innovation and fostering innovation.
Well, and that's exactly why we have you with us today. We want to hear about some of the innovation and some of the development that's going on that really affects the food industry, because you have a lot of technology that is helping impact in a positive way what's going on in our food system. Can you share a little bit about maybe a project or two that you have happening?
In terms of food, I think one of the key things is that, for the food industry from the production side, needs traceability, it needs financing, it needs slick, efficient processes. So some of the products or projects which are maybe directly applicable to that are M-Pesa, which started in Kenya with Safaricom, but is now, it has been for a while, the biggest bank in the region. Which basically uses mobile phone technology to authenticate people and to facilitate banking transactions, all using the mobile phone. That is directly applied to farmers and supply chain use cases. The other side of it is supply chain and things like trusted supply chain, trusted farmer, where essentially you're able to automate elements of the supply chain based on data that you're getting across this from devices and sensors. So connected farmer is another sort of area that we've been working on, as well as areas for how these farming equipment or expensive farming equipment can be financed. As you know, there is a big gap in productivity and infrastructure between developed countries and less developed countries. And a lot of that is about how you can get investment for the equipment that's used. We have something we've been working on in the area that I lead product, which is PairPoint, which is an Internet of Things or Economy of Things platform within Vodafone. And we've been working on something called Web3 Asset as a Service. And what this allows, what this makes possible is financing of farming equipment, where essentially the investor is paid back using smart contract and IoT technology to confirm every transaction. So every time the equipment is used, then the investor is paid back. So essentially the investor doesn't just finance it, they go into business with the farmer.
Right.
So it's a different model.
Yeah, and there are some very innovative things here. I'm going to back up and let's unpack each one of these things. So first of all, you talked about solving the problem of kind of identifying people using their mobile devices, because that whole transactional piece at the farm level, that's a problem to be solved. So Vodafone is working to solve that, right? Where you can actually identify somebody and you know where the transaction is coming from, and you have financial and other transactions, I imagine, happening there through the Smart Farmer project. Is that how did I understand that correctly?
No, absolutely. So the mobile phone number is a trusted credential, right? So it means that we generally, at least for postpaid customers, will be able to know who that customer is. We'll be able to have done KYC, know your customer procedures, AML procedures. So there is some authentication of those users. With M-Pesa, it goes further. So there are agents who will check physical documentations of mobile users before, as part of this procedure to confirm their identity. And I think this is important because then the mobile phone becomes your identity, right? It becomes your bank account. It becomes the means to transact. And with billions, I think over 7 billion mobile phones in operation across the globe, it's something that is available to everyone. I mean, as you know, there's I think over 1.7 billion people in the world without access to financial services. A lot of those are in these developing countries in the farming industry. So having the mobile phone able to offer financial services and being a vehicle to financial inclusion, it is very important. I think it goes further though, because essentially, you have the individual level where the mobile phone can prove your identity, but it can also be a business tool, right? So what you're seeing now with a move to super applications is, can the mobile phone not only confirm my identity, can we extend the credentials, however, that are used to make loans? So, for example, if a farmer always pays on time, they always do what they say they're going to do, could you have credit scoring credentials like proof of reputation or proof of regular payments, which aren't necessarily the same credentials you'd have on a developed Western country credit system, but they're the credentials which are more applicable in developing countries. And could that then be used, for example, to advance credit to farmers and actually help them engage in the financing system and business system?
Yeah, David, because there is a big move toward actually benefiting the farmer in a number of different ways. And this is one of them. There's a lot of talk about educating farmers, helping them to do the best they can as far as growing the proper crops, increasing their yields, all in the agricultural space. But let's not forget about the financial piece. We want them to be able to transact with others and also get paid. So this whole section that you're talking about is really going to bring a large number of people just accessibility that they haven't had before. I think that's really important because let's think if you're in a developed country, you're in the UK, I'm in the United States, but there's a vast part of the world that is not living in the same environment we're in, and you're trying to answer that problem and give solutions to providing access to different things. And financial services is a key piece of keeping our farmers farming and doing what they're good at, but we have to enable them to be able to do that and provide for their families.
Absolutely. And, we shouldn't forget that, everybody gains, right? Because where are the productivity increases in the supply chain going to come from? You could argue they're going to come from the areas that have the lowest levels of productivity, and these are the farmers and the people involved in the manufacturing, farm to manufacturing supply chain in developing countries. Right? These are areas where there's a lot of scope for improving productivity. And part of that is definitely improving communication, improving access to financial services, and getting access to credit and liquidity and new ways of investing. But we shouldn't also forget the biggest topic of 2023, and it will be the biggest topic of 2024 and 25, which is generative AI and how we're expecting this technology to really change developed industries, more or less, much less developing country industries. And
Very
you've
cool.
got to ask yourself the question: is generative AI going to be something that is the privilege of the rich countries and the rich organizations, or is this a technology that could actually have the most impact or significant impact on developing countries and supply chains and farming and the food industry in those countries? And again, the mobile phone is a means of connectivity, is a means of accessing this technology. Why are we not looking at leapfrogging some of the current industrial systems and processes and embedding straight away generative AI in the processes of these developing countries and their farming and food supply chain systems?
Right, because there can be a lot of feedback. All right, let's table the generative AI conversation for just a second, because I want to go back to, please don't stop listening to us and watching us on YouTube. Those of you, when you heard David say Web3, I can imagine you might have said, "Oh, I'm out." Please don't, because we want you to stay tuned with us and see the benefits of what's happening with technology and how it can really positively affect us. Because you also talked about smart contracts and how those can be used along with this connected mobile phone technology to be able to allow farmers to have better access for equipment and be able to transact to pay for the equipment or rent the equipment and work with those equipment providers. Can you explain for our audience who might not know a little bit about what a smart contract is? Because that's working really with blockchain technology. Again, please don't stop listening. But David's gonna give us just a brief overview for everyone of what the benefit is here.
Yeah, so a smart contract, firstly, is not exclusive now to Web3. In fact, on our platform, PairPoint, we have smart contracts that can essentially run, fintech or Web3 payments.
Great.
But in essence, a smart contract is repeatable business logic. Simple as that. So contrary to the name, it's not a legal agreement. So you do have this concept of smart legal agreements, which link with smart contracts to execute legal contracts. But in the technology sense, smart contract is just business logic, business rules, which are executed in a repeatable way, right? In blockchain and Web3, you have various smart contracts for identity, for payments, for token creation, as I said, we're now using the same concept and applying it to smart car EV charging or supply chain payments or automated documentation, etc. So it's just repeatable business logic that helps to automate processes.
For those of us, just to try to conceptualize, it might be like your car payment just automatically happening every month is a version of a smart contract, or your mortgage, or if you're renting something, like you said, with the EVs, if you're making an agreement there, for the charging to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So but I think what's important is when it becomes repeatable, when it becomes a sort of standard that can be configured and can be repeatable in similar contexts and circumstances and use cases.
So it's exciting to me to think about some peoples that have been disconnected from the traditional systems that have been set up so far to just have more accessibility. I think that's really the huge benefit that I'm hearing out of some of the technological innovation that you're having happen now, and especially at Vodafone with the outreach that you're making.
Absolutely. I think one of the success stories, again, I'm old enough to remember buying my first mobile phone in the 90s. That may give my age away, right? But I remember it being a really significant thing, and mobile phones were the privilege of the few back then, right? And even if you had one, you couldn't afford to use it. I mean, it was something else. But then, but back then, the concept of having a phone number and a phone that would work globally for calls, that could make messages, that could then allow you to access applications, internet, and do all the things we have now was unthinkable in the 1990s. It was absolutely unthinkable. And now we have the mobile revolution that's occurred, which has changed everything, right? Everything we do now is initiated from our mobiles. They work globally, and they are us, right? If you look at somebody's mobile, you'll find out, and the data in it, you'll find out a lot more about them than any other way. So I think that has been a great success story, connecting the world. As I said, there's over 7 billion mobile phones, over 90% penetration in the population. So you can basically think that most people who are old enough and can use a mobile phone, have one now. And it has changed the world. What are the next things that are coming? Well, we go back to the conversation of what can be done with this for those who aren't able to enjoy some of the things we have in developing countries, and it comes back to, again, the farmers and the people working in developing countries and in the food industry and supply chains, where essentially a lot of the value has inherently been in the manufacturing and the services sector, not at the bottom of the food chain, right? In the side of it, and that's across the world. That's not just developing countries. The difference is, in developing countries, obviously you have heavy subsidizing of farmers in the US and Europe and even the UK, and that isn't possible in developing countries. And on top of that, you also have international trade and and essential dumping of agricultural products, which lowers the price. So the rewards for these guys have not historically been the greatest, because they're not involved in that manufacturing and the industrial side of that. So you're just saying to yourself, okay, if we can connect these people, if we can if we can allow them to communicate and collaborate, right? And essentially form their own little businesses and pool resources. If we can then provide them with access to markets and access to funding, if we can provide them with applications to help them industrialize what they're doing, then could this change? Could they get more of the value chain? And I think that's part of the journey that's beginning now, where you're saying, okay, because we have these people connected, can we add digital identity to the offering that we're giving as a mobile provider? Can we allow people who have accredited digital identities to pool them, right, and form their own mini virtual businesses? And can we allow them to pool their bank accounts for business? Can we essentially allow them to use some things that is happening in technologies like Web3, like proof of reputation, proof of ability to pay, proof of reserves, etc., to start changing the finances? And I think these are some of the things that will happen in the future, but the first steps are starting now.
Yeah, that is really exciting. Thanks for breaking that down for us. Okay, let's bring the generative AI discussion back to the table. Now that we've got to try to take things one at a time so we don't lose our audience. I could talk to you all day about all this technology and the benefits that it's bringing to people. All right, generative AI, David, help us conceptualize. You were saying that it might be able to help some of the agricultural people. Just talk about some of the benefits or how they might use that, or if you have a use case in mind or an example that our audience might be able to conceptualize what you're talking about.
So generative AI, is forecast to replace up to 300 million jobs by 2030, right? Those are some of the forecasts that are being there. Is forecast also to be a $1 trillion industry by 2030. So I think the stakes and the excitement about it are pretty high. In practical terms, what is the application we have? Well, OpenAI, ChatGPT, but you're starting to see this take form in the sense that now OpenAI and AI in general is based on large language models, but you're now seeing that which are very expensive to train, that are very expensive to keep up to date, that aren't that flexible. And now you're seeing that you can actually, large language models can now, you can now push specific data into them. They can incorporate web data, etc. So you're starting to see them take off. And some of the applications that we're seeing is natural language translation, which is on the roadmap. You're starting to see applications which you can speak to that can put out videos. One of the most exciting things is generative AI that can produce code, and this is only the beginning, right? This only begun to come to know at the end of 2022 and accelerate through 2023, and we're already seeing the tooling and the productivity opportunities from generative AI skyrocket. So you're saying, okay, if it can do that for established industries like filmmaking or computer programming, software development, what can it do for a farmer? And I don't purport that the applications are there, but it isn't too far away to think that, okay, this generative AI could put farmers together, could help them pool resources, it could help them optimize, when they grow, how they maximize the productivity, how they find customers, how they charge. You can see that the tooling could be pretty significant in the areas where farmers are weakest, which is in the business side, in the market making side. So I'm thinking that there should, and I think will be, a lot of development with generative AI in this area. It's a big opportunity, and the productivity increase could be sizable.
Well, as you're talking, David, I'm thinking about loading a knowledge base of agricultural information. There's a big push to educate farmers in best practices agriculturally and how to figure out what's going on to increase their yield, how to maximize their soil treatment, et cetera. If you could load a knowledge base with that information where the farmer could have access to it and ask questions, and it would be pulled from that knowledge base, that would be a huge gain right there. Without, I'm not that product person, but that's just an idea that while you were talking.
No, you hit on a very, very important topic, right? Going back to generative AI, which is that the data is biased. So a lot of the data which is feeding generative AI, especially the internet data, comes from developing countries, right? It's biased. It's a biased data set. It doesn't represent people in developing countries. It definitely doesn't represent people who aren't on the internet. And as a result, we could be in a position where developing countries and people in the farming and food supply chain industry are excluded from this opportunity. Yeah. And the only way to get them included is to have representative data, right? Part of that is to do something which is really obvious that we're doing with Pearpoint, which is to link IoT data with large language models for AI.
There you go. That's exactly
something. A basic initiative like that would get representative data, but also to build on the inclusion of the mobile phone, and to make sure that that we are recording and including the data from these populations and geographies. Yeah. Else, we're going to have another position where generative AI becomes a tool for the rich and the rich countries, and we don't get this big boost in productivity in developing countries.
Well, and just also by brief explanation, IoT for our listeners, the Internet of Things. It's just really the ability to use sensors or other measurements that are out there in the field or wherever those are to be collected and put into a database to be accessed. That's what David's talking about. So being able to load in the data sets that the different sensor or whatever you might have in the fields or at the farms or whatever it is you're measuring, and being able to quantify that to have a data set out there to be accessed by the farmers from the developing countries. That's what David's talking about. Am I right, David? I don't mean to explain for you.
Really, really well explained. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's all very exciting, honestly. You got to get me to calm down for just a second, because I just think this is great innovation, and there are applications in all different industries. But obviously today we're talking a lot about the food industry and the supply chain, which affects all of us. So what else do you want to share about this? Let's see. What else did we talk about? We talked about empowering the farmers, getting their access to the financial industry, and especially important in developing countries. And is there a certain place where Vodafone, has a bigger presence with this, where you have some of these mobile phone operations, kind of the first movers, so to speak?
So is a big stronghold in a big sort of farming country.
Yeah.
There's companies like Mezzanine and Connected Farmer initiatives that are there. We've also worked with IBM on similar solutions.
Yeah.
So there's a lot happening in practice, but the technology, to be honest, is moving so fast that it's very hard to keep up with what's possible. I mean, some other developments, obviously, satellite is now being brought into the connectivity suite of options. So we have IoT that can incorporate satellite. You have basic satellite options, and as you know, Vodafone is part of a consortium for that. So that gets you bigger, broader connectivity. In terms of IoT, the 185 million devices we have, mainly in Europe, but also in the APAC region, also have roaming capabilities. So the technology means that the SIMs are always roaming, so you have connectivity around the globe. Some of the exciting things that we're working on at Peerpoint is linking things like smart labels. So a smart label is a label that you put on a parcel, which has a cellular a soft SIM embedded in it, and as a result, you can that parcel with that smart label can be tracked, traced, it's connected at all times, and we're linking that with with our Peerpoint platform, which has a distributed ledger, so that you can have an immutable record of certain activities to do with that parcel. We call that provenance of trust. And there's other technologies we're doing in the shipping industry, which is to, again, extend the identity of shipping containers. So you have what you call Know Your Container, which would have information on the container, the origin, the cargo. And essentially, we can automate some of the processes and documentation that is needed at port authorities. So there's a number of things happening. Another one that we're doing in supply chain is with spare capacity. So this is spare capacity on shipping and spare capacity on fleets. And this is really just using basic IoT sensors, so a weight sensor or a cargo sensor, just to say, okay, this truck has gone to its initial destination full, is coming back half empty. Can we sell the capacity that's half empty? Can we sell that to someone else? So these are some of the initiatives that we've got happening that could be relevant down the road to farmers in these regions.
Well, I think, direct application. Well, first of all, maximizing our resources by filling all the transportation containers. That's one of the hugest impacts as far as environmental, is the shipping and the trucking and not utilizing those to the full. But back in just a minute ago, when you were talking about the smart label and the embedded chip in there that communicates, and that the immutable, you use the word immutable, chain of custody, essentially that is going to track and record where that individual parcel goes step by step. So if it starts at, manufacturing, gets the smart label on it, then gets on a truck, then goes to a shipping container, all of that time, date, stamp, whatever information you're collecting about that, what truck it was on, what the temperature was in the truck, whatever's important, that all goes with that parcel, so that from a food safety or food traceability standpoint, if you have a problem with that, or you need to know what happened with that, or it got lost in transport, it didn't really get lost. You can find, where it is, even though it might not have arrived on the truck. You can track back the last place it was. So it's just that unchangeable chain of custody, wherever that parcel was, is recorded. And I think that that's a critical piece that's very applicable to supply chain in the food industry, particularly.
Absolutely. And we shouldn't forget as well that that the value can increase with this information. So if we know that the transportation was from environmental carbon sensitive transport, or if we know that it was logged at the point of farming, that organic materials were used, that the chain of custody followed an authentic route. All these things actually increase the value, but the problem is you can't prove it. You go to a supermarket, you see one banana, another banana. The only thing you can separate it, is a label. But actually, with a smart label, that information could be available digitally.
Right.
And this could, serve to increase the value that farmers can get downstream for their goods.
Yeah, good point. And consumers more and more want to know more information, David. They want to know where their food came from. If it's got a label on it that has some kind of certification, like organic or whatever it might be, they want to know that that's tracked back to the source and verified. So that's, there's lots of applications here for the technology that you are using. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. We have covered quite an array of topics today. But is there anything else you'd like to talk to our audience about before we go?
No, I think that's it. I just go back to my original point, which is looking back, we've come a long way in terms of, and Vodafone has played a role in connecting the world. 7 billion smartphones in operation, maybe 40 billion IoT devices. It's remarkable where we've come from. But we should also remember that a lot of the data from IoT devices isn't used, isn't monetized. And, despite, most of the world being connected, as we said before, there's a lot of the world who are disenfranchised and not able to access financial services. And I think that, the food industry, farmers, developing countries, are a prime area where we can increase this productivity, where we can really make a difference. And, I'd really like to see more innovation in this area. I'm very grateful for programs like this, which discusses and gets people like myself on to sort of look at ideas in this area. And I'd just like to see it. But I'd love to come back next year and maybe talk about some of the projects we have in this area. But yeah, really excited about the possibilities.
Well, and thanks for sharing with us kind of where we've been and where we are now, and a little bit of the view into where we're going. But you're right, innovation in the technology space is happening so fast, David, that we might not even be able to conceptualize all of the impacts that are going to be made in the near future. And I would love to have you back to review some of that in the future. That would be great. But thank you for your time today and being with us to unpack some of this with our audience.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this interview with David and some of the just innovative things he's sharing that you might not normally hear about, I thought it was very much a great view into what the future can hold. I thank him for being with us. And if you'd like to see more like him, please comment, subscribe to us, and we'll see you on our next podcast.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.